Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe. The breaking news, Thiago Silva is officially a Chelsea player. He has signed for Chelsea Football Club, the free agent, after the expiry of his contract from PSG last week after the Champions League final ended. It's a transfer we expected. 2 out of the 3 big announcements this week have now happened. Chilwell and Silva, just waiting for that big Kai Havertz announcement now from Chelsea. I think this is a good signing. I think overall, when you look at the signing, when you look at the pros and cons, which we're going to look at in today's video, I think it's a real smart bit of business by Chelsea. I really do. Just look at the pedigree and CV of this player. 7 French league titles in his time with PSG, a Copa America for Brazil, a highly experienced international that's still well thought of by a lot of people who watch him on a regular basis. Before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, if you're excited about Thiago Silva becoming a Chelsea player, hit that like button because it helps out the channel and videos as well. Let's get into the timeline. He was offered to Chelsea last week. That was reported by the Telegraph. We were unsure whether Chelsea were going to be serious about Thiago Silva, whether their interest was serious about him. But then it quickly became apparent, I believe it was about last Friday, that Chelsea was seriously considering bringing in Thiago Silva to the club. And then following the Champions League final, we knew the deal was basically done. Contract length was sorted. He was going to join Chelsea from there. Firstly, I want to talk about the pros. I think it's a very pragmatic and opportunistic signing by Chelsea in a problem position that needed to be upgraded this summer. We've spoken about a lot of targets. Declan Rice, who I think is a long-term target for Chelsea. John Stones, I didn't feel was ever going to add anything new that we didn't already have in a player like Andreas Christensen. You know, you go through Jose Jimenez at Atletico Madrid, Lewis Dunk at Brighton, who signed a new contract, James Tarkowski, there are other names as well. But I felt that based on the pedigree of the player and also the player wanting to join the Premier League and wanting to test himself again after a very successful career, I just think Chelsea probably looked at it and gone, even if this is a short-term option, let's take it right now because it could really benefit our defence next season. And I think age, which is of course a big factor of this transfer, people concerned about it, age shouldn't always be a negative. Yes, we want to see fresh young players come into this Chelsea side, especially in attacking areas, which we've seen recently, but it shouldn't be a negative. Just look at the 1920 season for evidence of older players really helping Chelsea out when it counted. Olivier Giroud playing some of the best football of his career at his age for Chelsea. Dave still holding down that position at right back, also playing left back and centre back. Just because your age maybe is higher than others and just because you may be coming to the end of your career doesn't mean you're finished, doesn't mean you're washed up, doesn't mean big clubs shouldn't look at you as a reliable player. Thiago Silva, and I reference this with JT. JT played some of the best years of his Chelsea career at 34, 35 when he won Premier League titles for us. So don't dismiss Thiago Silva just because of the age compared to other players. I think that's a key factor. Positional awareness, I think, is really good for Thiago Silva, a player who is still considered by some as one of the best defenders in the world. Ability to play in Champions League finals, that big performance that night, I think was really impressive to me. You shouldn't always base a player's ability just on one game, but I think for such a big game against such an impressive opponent, I think Silva handled himself really well, still looked very much up to it on the biggest occasion. I also think for me a big thing with Chelsea's defence moving forward is danger awareness. We lacked it so often last season. Just danger awareness, something JT was so brilliant at, and even Gary Cahill was brilliant at over the years. Chelsea, the amount of times a ball would go into the box, just static defending, and hopefully a player of Silva's pedigree and ability and nous can help with some of that, especially some of his other defenders. Influence as well in the dressing room, helping some of the younger defenders, them looking up to Thiago Silva, what he's done in his career, the leadership and organisation, someone to command respect from fellow defenders and younger defenders in the first team squad. But, you know, I look at all the defenders currently, they all have their own flaws, and maybe Thiago Silva matched with one of them could work really well for Frank Lampard and be the missing ingredient that we saw last season with a shaky defence. I know character and leadership can be very simplistic terms in the modern game, and I think that sometimes English fans especially, we look at a player who just shouts and commands a lot and shouts at other players and does a lot of hand gestures on the pitch as that's good leadership, or once in a while puts in a good tackle. I think that can be simplistic, and I don't want to just say just because someone shouts a lot. I've seen many players over the years for a variety of clubs, just because they shout doesn't mean they're very good at being a leader or just being an influence on the pitch, a positive influence on the pitch. Sometimes I think it can actually be the opposite effect, but I think that someone of Thiago Silva's class could definitely add something we've lacked in terms of leadership, hopefully. I just want to touch on the captaincy issue. I've seen this being debated by Chelsea fans about, instantly Thiago Silva comes in and he gets the captain's armband. I would say, I'm not a massive betting man, but I would say that over the course of the season, Thiago Silva will hold the armband at one point. I think just based on Dave, his longevity at right back, Reece James potentially taking over in that position. I don't want to write off Dave because look at this season. I think he's still got at least 1 year left in him, and I think he'll still want to prove himself. But captaincy and leadership is a big thing for Chelsea. It's a big question mark. And even if it is for a short term, even if it's maybe just a vice captain role to begin with. Now I want to move on to the cons of this transfer, because I do think there are some that definitely, I think I'd be disingenuous not to bring them up, because I did have these concerns when we were initially linked to Thiago Silva. Firstly, age. It sounds hypocritical. I did speak about the positivity of not dismissing age. I think that, sometimes age can definitely be a good thing for a team, and having no senior players in the dressing room. But I just worry about the adaptability of Thiago Silva to the pace of the Premier League. Think about the second week of the Premier League season at home to Liverpool, the champions, the pace of Salah, Mane, Firmino, one of the most ferocious attacks in the Premier League. Look at the way they got past our defenders in the 5-3 defeat in July in the Premier League. So I think that's something to be concerned about. Also, just the natural pace and intensity of the Premier League, momentum swings in the English game, dealing with those as an older player who's used to playing for more dominant teams like PSG, who have a lot of the ball in the Premier League. No matter who you're playing, 5 minutes you can be under the cosh, even against teams at the bottom of the league. That is the thing about the Premier League. That's what makes it such an unpredictable beast. And think about some of the players we brought in from foreign leagues who are supposed to be tempo setters for our player, like Jorginho. They've still struggled with this at times because of the intensity and unpredictability of the Premier League. Also, the fitness of a player like Thiago Silva at his age in a very extremely congested season for Chelsea. If Chelsea do well this season, they're going to be playing a lot of games, and even if they don't do as well, they're still going to be playing a lot of games in a short period of time. That's the thing about this season. When you look at it, the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Champions League group stage, the Premier League, all mixed in together. We're starting in September, we're finishing in May. That's at least a hope. There's going to be so many games, and even in a normal season, you think about that festive period, that really harsh winter period. Can Thiago Silva adapt to that as well? I think that's going to be a big challenge for a player of his age, and it may mean that Frank will have to rotate. It is a short-term signing, absolutely. It's an issue that needs to be rectified in 12 months or more again, and that's something Chelsea are currently looking at. It's curious, Malang Sarr now officially signed to the club. That's a longer-term deal. Xavier Muamba. We look at younger players like Mark Guehi going out on loan. Potentially they could fill in further down the line for Chelsea if Fikayo Tomori goes out on loan, gets more experience, then returns to the first team and breaks in there. What about Ethan Ampadu? Or, as I've said before, Declan Rice. Could Declan Rice be the answer in the long term if Chelsea wait for him maybe next summer to bring him in from West Ham for a big fee? Or there could be a more obvious option. I mean, I think this transfer as well signals the difficulty of obvious, or big, clear centre-back targets this summer for Chelsea, when in other years maybe a Virgil van Dijk was available on the market for Chelsea. Lastly, I want to bring up Lampard's defensive structure, because right, we've brought in Ben Chilwell, which I think is a brilliant signing. I think bringing in Thiago Silva, I think, is a smart signing that could turn out to be very beneficial to us. But as I've said before, set pieces needs to be rectified that by the coach, on the training ground, getting that right for next season. How we're dealing with that zonal or man marking, a mixture of both. We need to improve in that area, or we're not going to move forward. Also, the gaps between midfield and defence, which were so present pretty much from pre-season in 2019 all the way to July 2020. That's a big problem. And it's on Lampard as a coach to improve that setup in his team to counteract some of the inefficiencies of Thiago Silva's game, which is clearly going to be there if he has to sit a little bit deeper potentially because of his age and pace. But overall, I do think this is a positive signing for Chelsea. I think he's someone that's going to command respect instantly in Chelsea's dressing room and can be that mature leader that potentially could help us out defensively and rectify a lot of the mistakes we saw. Please let me know your opinions on Thiago Silva's arrival in the comments below. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.